Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
Hello and welcome to the Popternative podcast or web show or whatever you'd like to call us. This is the podcast or web show where we add digital dialogues for the worlds of social media, sports, and pop culture. And we have a panel where we're going to be talking about sports and social media and broadcasting. We have it all for you this evening. So I'm quickly going to introduce the panel. First, we have a two-time guest on Popternative. He has a new show, 1 to 4, on TSN 1050 today. And he's the Blue Jays reporter for TSN. Scott Macarthur is back with us. Scott, welcome back to the show.
Awesome to be on. Thanks, Petey.
No problem. And we have one of my really good friends, and he's been busy lately doing communications for the Ottawa 67s, and this summer he was doing communications and broadcasting for the Ottawa Champions. We have Michael Nellis is with us. Michael, welcome to Popternative.
I'm glad to finally join you.
No problem. I'm glad it finally worked out this time. And we have someone who's been making headlines recently on sport highlight packages. We have the play-by-play broadcaster for the Mississauga Steelheads in the OHL, Kyle Liberto, is with us. Kyle, welcome to Popternative.
Thank you so much for having me, Pete.
No problem. So, brief opening remarks. Scott Macarthur, you have a new show on TSN from 1 to 4. That is exciting. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what has changed a little since the last time you came on last year?
Yeah, I'm still the Blue Jays reporter, but there have been some changes at the radio station, and that's not uncommon in this business. A lot of times stations kind of move around their lineups and do different things, and I've been given an opportunity to take over the 1 to 4 time slot on TSN 1050 in Toronto for the time being. And I'm, as we sit here right now, well into my third week of doing the show. And depending on when you're watching this, the Grey Cup will either be coming up or it'll be in the rearview mirror. But as we sit here right now, my Thursday and Friday shows for the end of pre-Grey Cup week, we're going to actually be at the Metro Toronto Convention Center. So there'll be a lot of that. And it's pretty appropriate that I'm on this program, Pete, because I know you're big on social media. And I am forcing myself, and I think I'm doing an okay job, to learn things like Snapchat. And I've been doing a lot of Instagram, your stories, and we're trying to do some stuff in show as well as pre and post show and just the general stuff. So I'm really trying to turn it into a social media friendly experience for everybody. And with a lot of the young listenership, the way to reach you guys is beyond that stuff. So I'm fast tracking my learning process.
Great. Well, we're happy to have you, and we hope to be an asset to your learning of the social media ways. And just a quick point, for the show's sake, I'm really hoping the Red Blacks can get a big win, because we have some Red Black players scheduled to come on the show in the new year, so I feel like conversations would be a lot better if they win.
They're in top.
Yeah,
they're in top.
no.
That Calgary team is as good a CFL team as there's been in a long time, but it'd be nice for them to do it. I worked up there for a long time, more than a decade, so my heart is with the Red Blacks on Sunday. Yeah,
and speaking of Ottawa, Michael Nellis is with us. Michael is currently a journalism student at Carleton University, but is getting his feet wet in the sports media communications field, working with the 67s, working with the Ottawa Champions. So the one thing I want to know right now, baseball in the summer, hockey now in the fall and winter, what's been the biggest change or transition? Because it's all communications, but what has been hard or difficult to adapt to with the communications from baseball to hockey?
Well, I think just speeding up. Baseball, it's such a lax, laid-back sport. It seems like, of course, until you get to the playoffs when everything ramps up big time. But in the regular season, you really have a lot of time to do things. It seems like. Whereas with hockey, you don't really have the ability to get into the routine as much as you do with baseball, because baseball teams play every day. And Scott, being on the Blue Jays beat last year, would know all about being with the team and religiously following that team for your job every single day. You get into the routine, you get into the momentum of things. Whereas with hockey, the 67s essentially play games on weekends in the Ontario Hockey League. There's a new program that we've put in this year where almost all of our home games are in the afternoon on either Saturday or Sunday, with a couple Saturday night home games and Friday night home games mixed in. But it's only on weekends. And so for me personally, switching back and forth between going from school and then moving into hockey on the weekends and a communications job, that's been a difficult part. But in terms of the actual communication part of it, I found really before games, baseball players, they get into the routine. Like I said, it's such a big thing with baseball, and maybe it's just the spirit of the league that I covered, the Can-Am League, where the Ottawa Champions played. But it seemed like players were a lot more available before the game, whereas with hockey, you have to take a couple hours before every game as a player, as a coach, to get yourself acclimated to the team that you're playing against, to look at video, to get focused. And so before the game, I found there was a lot more to do in baseball than there is in hockey, whereas a lot of those things come after the game when you're speaking to players and coaches and generating content to get out on social media in the hockey world. So I think those were some of the big differences in communications from baseball to hockey.
No, absolutely. That's well put for sure. And Kyle Liberto is with us, and Kyle's doing play-by-play, something that Michael Nellis has done and something that I'm doing this season as well. And I've told Michael this.
I've done it too.
Yeah.
Forget that.
Yeah. You've done play-by-play? Or color?
A little bit. You got to go way back in the past, though.
Yeah.
Back when I was.
Well, there's obviously, everyone could agree with the statement that doing play-by-play and color commentary is a completely different. It's a completely different task, basically. So, but yeah, no. Kyle is known for his unbelievably energetic goal calls that you put. There was one that was posted on Instagram that I kept rewatching it because it was so good. So it was awesome. So Kyle, talk a little bit about how you got into play-by-play and about this new, some might say maybe unorthodox style of announcing goals that or calling goals that you're doing now with the Steelheads.
Well, it's been a grind for sure. I think all of us know it's very difficult to get to the positions where you want to get to. It's such a competitive field in broadcast journalism, specifically in sports media. But I've been with Rogers Television for about 6-7 years, and I've done pretty much everything in the sports realm, from high school sports, covered the OCAA, which is the Ontario Conference of the Athletics Association. Even did a little bit of badminton back in the day.
Oh, wow.
Which is, pretty crazy to think about now, looking back. But grinded my way to where I am now, which is the play-by-play of the Mississauga Steelheads. And I can tell everybody right now, if you think you're going to get a prime position like that coming right out of school, you're dreaming. It's a lot of hard work. It really is. And I'm here now, and the uniqueness that you talked about of my play-by-play, I think just comes from watching a ton of sports and seeing the Gus Johnsons of the world. He's a guy that I really emulate and look up to. And back in the day when he was calling some March Madness for CBS, that was crazy. March Madness is my favorite sporting event to watch year in and year out, and that's kind of where I got some of my flavor from. And I love Sid Seixeiro. He's a very unique character as well, and I just love entertaining. I just knew that being behind the microphone was for me, and that's where I'm right at home. When I'm in the booth on Friday nights and Sunday afternoons at Steelhead games, I'm right at home, and I just love entertaining people. And it's got me on Sportsnet a couple times, which has been pretty surreal, but nothing compared to a guy like Scott, who's covering such a great team like the Blue Jays for the entire country. But it's been a lot of fun, and it's been a wild ride for sure.
Mm-hmm. No, we're happy to have you on, and just realize, you look at the three people that are on this panel, there's a lot of similarities, but there's a lot of differences as well in terms of, how all four of us got to where we are. Scott, you talked about a little bit about your journey last time when we had the baseball episode with Nate, who did the social media for the Mariners, and Jason Browder was with one of the with the Michigan minor league team. And starting the conversation, you want about social media. A big thing that happened in the world of sports yesterday is the Vegas Golden Knights was unveiled as the 31st team in the National Hockey League, and it is safe to say that there was a divide in terms of people who liked the team name and people who didn't like the team name, or people that liked the logo but didn't like the name, or vice versa. I mean, Scott, you being on your phone and kind of having to do a little bit more research now that you're doing the 1 to 4, and it's not just baseball, it's other sports as well. How do you approach these, very, I wouldn't say, intense subjects, but you're going to see a lot of polarizing opinions on certain things. And as someone who's like a broadcaster or a radio host or DJ, how are you going to maybe use some of that to kind of create discussion for your show? Or do you just ignore a lot of it and say, wow, these guys are just really salty about situations, there's not much we can kind of talk about?
Well, I think it depends on the subject matter. So, you can get a little creative with it. I'll come to work in the morning, and I try to arrive 2.5, 3 hours before 1 o'clock. So before the show starts, we have a pre-show meeting at 10:30, and we'll bounce some ideas around. And some, it's kind of like throwing spaghetti at the wall, right? 1 or 2 noodles going to stick, and you might go with it. But the 10 or 12 or 14 things you talked about that somebody nixed that won't end up making it to air. So you try to have, like for me, the nickname of the Las Vegas hockey team is something you can have fun with. Vegas is dropping the loss from its name, so they're the Vegas Golden Knights. And so for a period of time on the show today, I was introducing some of my guests by dropping their first name, and I just called them their last names. You can do fun, silly little things like that. But there's also a time to be more serious, and the topics dictate that. And I just say this, I think we're all entitled to our own opinions. Everything in this business is subjective, but I had an opportunity to fill in for Brian Hayes in the final 2 weeks of August on Overdrive, on our drive time program, and it just happened that at that time the Colin Kaepernick stuff happened. It came to light that he was kneeling or sitting for the U.S. national anthem. And we spent the good part of a week talking about that. We had fantastic guests, Scoop Jackson, J.A. Adande, you name it. We reached out and we got a lot of these people. And some of those interviews really stand out as highlights for me, not just because of the quality of guest, but because I felt like I responsibly tackled a really difficult social issue that was extremely serious. So I think it's all about subject matter and level of importance in the grand scheme of things. Las Vegas Golden Knights, Vegas Golden Knights, Vegas Black Knights, Vegas Rolling Dice, Vegas whatever the hell you're going to call them. That's fine. You can have some fun with it. You can gather opinion. Throw a Twitter question out there or whatever, maybe do some silly and fun social media around it. But you also know when the time is to get serious, and a lot of people have common sense about what topics require serious attention and which you can kind of mix and mingle the fun in. And so that's just typically how we try to judge it.
Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna start calling for the last names too. So Nellis, you guys don't have to say my last name if you were wondering, so because it's very Greek and very long. But
I'll take a shot at it.
Okay, go. Yeah, if you want. So Nellis, basically from what Scott just said, which I think would be really interesting, is a lot of people are when you say like, oh, you're a bandwagon, you jumped on the bandwagon, you're a fan of this team or not. What do you think about the concept of like jumping on the bandwagon for content? So, for example, yesterday I saw a post with the Ottawa West Golden Knights CCHL Tier 2 team doing a post saying, congratulations Vegas Golden Knights, but we like our name and we're staying with our name and we like our logos or our colors. There's kind of, and I've had conversations with people who run big brands on the show before, like Ben from Foot Locker, about kind of like FOMO and all these concepts of, trying to be topical of content. But is there a line you got to draw where you're not looking so maybe desperate? And I'm not saying the West Golden Knights post was desperate. I think it was a great post for that because it's the same name. But I find when you're jumping on something that maybe doesn't have to do with your brand, like if you're, an insurance company, you're tweeting about, the Las Vegas Knights, that maybe the Golden Knights, maybe it doesn't work as well. So from your experience creating content, what do you think about this concept of, the bandwagon, jumping on the bandwagon of content?
I think it depends on where you are in the social media world, what your team, if you're running a team account, because with the Ottawa Champions, that's what I did, you're trying to find that line of coming off as just kind of grasping for attention or actually just jumping on a bandwagon and rolling with it. One of the things about social media, I think, is that a lot of it is just that, jumping on bandwagons. Internet memes is a huge part of it, right? And that's what people do. They see a joke or they see a meme on the internet that they like, and they try to, piggyback on that idea, create something else that's funny, and roll with that. We've seen that before. I think in another way you could talk about piggybacking off of other ideas from other social media. Like, for example, using GIFs on Twitter. That's something that has been adopted by some professional sports social media accounts, and has been after it was adopted by them, it was just completely multiplied by everybody else. You see CCHL teams do it in the junior A ranks. You see OHL teams do it. We do it with the 67s, and we did it over the summer from time to time with the Ottawa Champions. But I think at the same time you want to be wary of when you're jumping on bandwagons, and try to create some of your own original content as well, and try to create things that other people will be able to piggyback off, if that makes sense.
No, it does, for sure. And Kyle, you being, Liberto, you being a play-by-play guy, kind of, before the games, after the games, kind of seeing all this stuff come down in your timelines, you got to be thinking that you're looking at that kind of as, content that you can maybe use during your broadcasts or your post-game shows. So you got to make sure, like, maybe if something happens where with the Vegas Golden Knights, with all that, maybe that is something that you'll, if applicable, apply into a Mississauga Steelheads broadcast, right?
Well, people that know, my style of broadcasting, I'll use just about anything. I mean, pop culture is a big thing that I use. We have a guy on the Mississauga Steelheads named Shaw Boomhauer, and, that's like a broadcaster's dream to call it, a name like that in a game. And, when he scored his first Ontario Hockey League goal, I just yelled out an emphatic boom, and then along with that, I yelled, "Here comes the boom!" Shout out to DMC and Nellis. These are, you just throw out random things just because it's what the fans like. They like something different, and I wouldn't necessarily maybe saying going on a bandwagon, and sometimes it's very difficult for us that really focus on a specific sport. For example, with me covering hockey and Scott covering baseball, to have an opinion on something else, some fan might think, well, what do you know about that sport? You cover baseball, or you cover hockey.
Baseball,
right, exactly, right? It's very difficult to have an opinion on another sport when you're focused on covering one sport for your job. So I think there's a fine line that needs to be drawn there, but I'm right with Mike and Scott on this one for sure.
You mean you're with Nellis and Macarthur? Okay, I'm going to stop that because.
You're piggybacking content, Romelio. I'm going to sue you.
I'm sorry, guilty as charged. But that's an interesting point, though. Scott, your Twitter account, I feel like you do a really good job with it in terms of not making it, like, there's a lot of Blue Jays, but, you're not just tweeting about Blue Jays. And I think for other people that are beat reporters for TSN covering other things, like, for example, Brett Wallace and John Liu, and they admit it, they've been on the show, they use their Twitter accounts just for their job, just to report about their teams. But they're not going to, like, tweet out, you know, things from their personal life or about other sports, because Scott and I are big wrestling fans. I was at SmackDown yesterday, by the way. It was pretty cool.
I was at Ottawa. Nice.
Oh, you went to TakeOver. We had an NXT taping. We had like Samoa Joe versus Perfect Ted Todd Dillinger. That was our main event. So it was.
I have to say, I used to be a big wrestling fan. You know, I'm not really into it anymore. But NXT TakeOver Toronto Saturday night, Bobby Roode's entrance was the greatest thing I've ever.
It was glorious.
Awesome. It was incredible.
Yeah.
I'm the only one who really project anything in the takeover conversation. I also used to watch wrestling a lot. I haven't had the chance or the time really to do it as often lately, but I almost went to SmackDown last night in Ottawa. I decided not to, but how was the show?
Oh, it was a really good show. I mean, it's incredible what, you know, this organization does, like this company does. The WWE, it's a machine.
Yeah.
And
but just to jump in on that, I think WWE back in the late 2000s got out in front of the social media game before a lot of the authentic sports organization, you know, MLB, NHL, NFL, they were way out in front of the game. I remember one of the first times I heard about Twitter was WWE.
Yeah, but it's not just social media. For example, yesterday, and this is like my dad, who's been watching wrestling, was actually at WrestleMania 2, which, like, I always tell people that's the craziest thing when your dad was at WrestleMania 2.
Which one was he at? Because that was held at 3 arenas.
Or maybe was it 2 or 3? It was the one where it was Hulk Hogan versus Macho Man Randy Savage, and the winner.
5, Atlantic City.
Yeah, he was at that one then.
Wow.
Yeah, he was there. But he was telling me that, for example, yesterday Dean Ambrose came out in Ottawa Senators jersey to win over the crowd. My dad was telling me that the WWE was like one of the first companies to do that, to kind of embrace the hometown crowds when they go around.
Yeah, they do that. They embrace the hometown crowds, and then they get the heel characters to insult the team.
They were the first. That's
one of my favorite things about wrestling, is seeing guys like The Miz come out and just completely insult the Cleveland Indians or the Cleveland Browns or whatever, or if he were in Cleveland or something like that.
And we were lucky to have, like, I had a former WWE superstar on the podcast in the summer. I had Daniel Puder, who won the $1 Million Tough Enough, and he. Just to hear the stories about him, and just to hear also, like, the respect that he had for a lot of the big names, where, you know, just him talking about how amazing John Cena was, just kind of blew my mind, because this is someone who, his career in the WWE didn't really pan out like John Cena or Dean Ambrose. And, you know, he wasn't crap talking him or anything. He was saying John Cena is a phenomenal athlete, and he's there for a reason. But yeah, no, the conversation of like WWE can kind of be applied to a lot of what we're talking about. I mean, they properly have utilized social media to, you know, brand everything. Like, everything is a brand for them. And you even see that, for example, now with hashtags. Like, Kyle, you can kind of talk about this a little bit, but, you know, or Mike, you can too, with the OHL, you know, the Ottawa 67s, Mississauga Steelheads. There's going to be some, like, hashtags that are used only by Mississauga Steelheads or Mississauga Steelhead fans, or there's going to be hashtags. So those are, like, Mississauga Steelhead or Ottawa 67 branded hashtags. So we're taking a hashtag and right there, boom, it's a brand. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what the WWE do with everything. They have so many hashtags. And my next question for all of you is, what do you think about this concept of work, like people who work in social media and sports, you know, they're creating hashtags or titles, or they're doing things that don't seem to be huge, big, like theatric productions, but they're still creating content, but the content's obviously coming in a small package where you're creating just like a slogan or a tagline, right? The concept of a content producer, I think, Mike, has changed over the years in terms of what exactly is being done because of digital media.
It's amazing how little it takes for something to catch on these days. Like one hashtag you could place, and then all of a sudden there's a timeline flooded with people using that hashtag. Like I remember with the Champions this past summer, it was around June when Ottawa was starting to contend for first place in the Can-Am League, and we started using the hashtag Champs Chase.
Yeah.
And as soon as we put that hashtag out, Pete, you actually helped me develop that hashtag. I asked you for your input on it.
Yes, you did.
And you helped me with it. So maybe I was thinking a little bit too much, but you know, sometimes people can come up with these ideas, boom, with the snap of the finger, they tweet it out, and all of a sudden everybody is using it. And with Champs Chase, people were using that for the next 2-3 weeks as Ottawa tried to contend for first place. So I think that's a good example of that. And I believe that as content creators and as digital people, we really have to be mindful of the types of things that people are looking for from these sports accounts. You know, simple things, trendy things. Look at what people could be taking out of these, out of how your team is playing right now. If your team is on a run, and try to develop something off that. Feed off the energy of your fans. That's what we tried to do this summer, and that's what the 67s are trying to do now, with Ottawa winning 5 of their last 6 games in the OHL. So it really does work to a pretty good degree. I had basically when Michael brought up the Champs Chase, just reminded me of something that I just thought of, that you can, or like you could choose to do it or not, but it's just an idea. You should do something with your Twitter account, not your handle, but your display name. You should change it to Kyle Liberto with like 5 O's, almost like you're calling a goal.
I like that one, definitely. I mean, no, that's awesome.
It's just an example of that type of content, right? It's a small little idea, but boom, you know, people are content producers just doing that on a daily basis.
Yeah, no, and I mean, with the hashtags, for me, it's been branding for myself as well. You know, coming in last year, I've been with the Steelheads for 2 seasons. Last year was my first year with the organization. I really wanted to go in, you know, with a bang. I wanted to go in and make an impression, and I wanted to make an impression with the players, because I think having a relationship with them is very important, and you know, having them relate to the work that you're doing, along with their billet families and things like that. There's different elements in the Ontario Hockey League that you're really looking to touch on. So I went in and I was thinking about something unique that I could do, and I started a hashtag. I started a hashtag before every pregame, and I made a little video. It was called hashtag pregame flex, and it was simple things. It was me getting my green tea before a game. It was, you know, me jamming out to a tune, heading to the arena. I mean, just something unique, and the guys loved it, because I sent it about 2 hours, an hour and a half before the game. That's just about the time where, you know, they're going on their phone, you know, for the last time before they hit the ice, before they go into warm-ups, and I'm getting likes, retweets. That's how you get followers. That's how you get a fan base, and that's how you get a great following. And they just ate it up. You know, they really ate it up. They loved it, and that's, again, it's all about branding. And you know, Twitter is your brand, especially for on-air personalities, and you know, for the broadcast world. I think, you know, hashtags are a huge part of your brand, along with your Twitter.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that this show has become like a social media consultant session, but Scott, another thing too is like your show is 1 to 4. You could do stuff or like contests or figure something out with the fact that it is a 3-hour show, so you can kind of announce something in the beginning of the show and then use, you know, hashtag 3-hour power hour or something, and then basically come back to it at the end of the show and be like, you know, this was the 3-hour hashtag 3-hour power hour trivia question answer. Congratulations, you've won, you know, tickets to this. Like, so you can have so much fun with hashtags. And, you know, if you would have told me like 5-6 years ago that we would literally be like talking about taking, you know, the hashtag symbol and putting a word to it, and then you could click on it, and that kind of is just like a catalog of all this like search engine stuff, I would think you're crazy. Like, it's just unbelievable, the concept of hashtags. And Mike, have you ever had to like explain a hashtag to someone that's maybe a little older that doesn't understand it? Because I have, and it's,
I think it's a pound signal
yeah,
or a number.
and it's pretty crazy that when you explain it to them, it's like one of the most insane things they've ever seen. It's like them opening presents on Christmas for the first time. They're like, this is unbelievable. You know, I could just play hashtag Blue Jays and I can see everyone's tweet. Like, they don't realize how powerful it is.
Yeah, well, that's one way that you can do it, and, you know, the pregame flex, I think that's amazing. That's a fantastic idea, Kyle, but there's so many different things that you can do with hashtags in terms of, you know, like if you have an opinion or something, you can put your opinion in a hashtag at the end of the tweet. That's one way that people use them. And it's funny that you asked me if I've explained it to anybody. I've explained it to my dad before. This was probably about a year ago. He got Twitter, and he sees the hashtags and you know, understands the whole concept. But he asked me, like, how do you use the hashtag? Like, what should I put at the end of this tweet in a hashtag? And I would kind of look at the tweet and say, okay, well, you could say this or you could say that. And from this point on, pretty much every single time he tweets something, it has a hashtag at the end of the game, at the end of the tweet. Like he was tweeting about the Denver Broncos a couple weeks after I told him about it, and he put hashtag saddling up, and I'm thinking, like, that's really good for a guy that just started using it. And, you know, it's interesting how quickly these things can catch on.
Yeah, I mean, for my personal account, like Pete, you were talking earlier, I think the most important thing you can do, and it's different when you're running a team account because you are running an organization's account, but Kyle was talking about some of what he does with his personal Twitter account. Authenticity is absolutely key, and I think people can see through anything that is inauthentic. So one of my favorite things to do, and you got to gear it towards your personality because, again, you're being authentic. So people who follow me on Twitter know that I'm a diehard San Francisco 49ers fan. And I am nauseated by the current state of the team, and I'm legitimately angry about it because I do care. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that I've done over the last couple of years since they mutually parted ways with Jim Harbaugh is I troll the owner, Jed York, on his Twitter account. But my goal always is to push it as far as I can without getting blocked, but never taking it to a personal level. So that way it stays lighthearted. It's not mean-spirited. If I ever bumped into that SOB in the street in Santa Clara, I'd probably be nice to him. You know, just because I like to think that. But, you know, so now some of my followers will occasionally tweet me about the 49ers, or they'll include Jed York's Twitter handle in a tweet at me. And I may have not tweeted anything at Jed York in the last 3 or 4 weeks, but people remember that. And, you know, I buy a Starbucks coffee every morning, and one of the younger coworkers I had said she was going to Tim Hortons, and she said, "Does anybody want coffee?" And I just lifted up my cup. And I said, "I'm good, I've already got my coffee." And she looked at me and she said, "Well, that's bougie." Well, I didn't know what the hell bougie meant. So I looked it up. And it's now become a hashtag that people send stuff. I just got 5 minutes before I came on here. Somebody accused one of my most recent tweets of being bougie. So, you know, you just kind of have fun with it and all that. But if you are authentic, and you know, Kyle's passion for calling the game and all of that is very obvious. So if you are authentic about however it is you deliver whatever it is you are delivering, and you are consistent in your use of hashtags, they can become part of your identity on social media, and you can use that as a vehicle to drive whatever you're trying to drive, whether that's calling hockey games, whether that's part of a segment in a radio talk show or whatever it is that you do.
Mm-hmm.
People very quickly begin to recognize you for certain things, and sometimes you don't even realize that you're being recognized. And you got to kind of clue in and stay on top of it, because these things can move awfully quickly.
Mm-hmm. And I still can't believe Twitter has not verified you yet. I'm just saying. I
don't think I've ever asked.
No, but you're a TSN employee. It should happen automatically. It should. That's what.
I'll get on that.
Like Kelsey Braid. Like I was talking to him, and he recently just got the check mark like last month. But like for a while, he had it like in his bio, and everyone else was getting it, and he just never had it. And then one day, boom, he got it. So hopefully it will happen. But like I'm surprised. Maybe it
the blue check mark, is that's like the next rung in the universe? You move up? That's a...
No, well, it basically means that so
I'm the real...
You're Scotty Mac, exactly. Like I could right now make an account pretending to be you. And people don't realize like that the verification is not necessarily about like you're a celebrity. It's more like PD Beats is verified, this is PD Beats, that's it. No one else can be like me, basically, because there's so many parody accounts and not even parody accounts, but there's so many accounts pretending to be like Sidney Crosby or pretending like it's ridiculous.
Well, the one that some people got nabbed on, and this happens a lot, but the one that happened recently was Ken Rosenthal. It was a fake Rosenthal Twitter account. I believe Roseanne was Roseanne, so there was an A instead of an E. Same avatar photo and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
He tweeted something like Edwin had resigned in Toronto for $5 and 145. And I noticed a couple of news people in our industry.
Pierre LeBrun?
Retweeted that.
Pierre LeBrun gets it all the time.
I took the bait.
Oh, no doubt.
I took the bait.
Yeah, no, I saw that one too. But like Pierre LeBrun on Trade Center is like the worst time to be on Twitter.
You're right. That's where the blue check mark comes in, because I will, before I retweet something from a prominent journalist I recognize, I will click on his account, and if I don't see the blue check mark, then I leave it.
Yeah, I mean that is a thing, and I think that there's like a misconception about the blue check mark, because people are like seeing it as like a symbol of like importance or being like one step above someone. But
you mean you're not dining at the finest steak restaurants if you don't have the blue check mark?
I have the blue.
I mean, I'm going to go from Ponderosa to Harbor 60 here in Toronto if I get that blue check.
Well, I mean, I have the blue check mark, and I ain't going to any steak house anytime soon. So to answer your question, but
we can go to Stanley's though, right?
Oh, of course.
Somebody gets you a gift card. You can.
Yeah, for sure. If anyone wants to, Christmas is gonna snap her finger. It's gonna be Christmas time. But I think we're gonna wrap up. I think we had a really good conversation about all this stuff. I mean, it's kind of stuff that I wanted to talk about on Popternative when I first had it, because I think even you being on the radio, you being a beat reporter, we're creating content and we're kind of behind the scenes, and we're not necessarily playing the sport, or we're not in the band, we're not like a WWE wrestler, but we're kind of covering it and creating content around it, and we're kind of behind the scenes people, which I think is what social media is all about. So I was really happy to have you guys on. I mean, Mike, I appreciate you coming on the show, and I look forward to spending the holidays with you in Montreal for the World Junior Hockey Championship, because we will be on the social media team for the Montreal event. And Mike, any closing remarks? I appreciate you coming on.
Well, thanks for bringing me on, Pete. I actually am going to interject here with one more hashtag that I just remembered.
Sure.
That I wanted to put forward from the baseball season with the champions. We had a catcher on our team. His name was Danny Grauer. Okay.
Oh, I remember this.
The last name Grauer allows for quite a couple of rhymes if you want, and so we had the hashtag Grauer Power on the video board when he was at bat. And the first time that we did that, in the first game that we put that hashtag up, he hit a 3-run home run in the bottom of the 8th inning.
Power of the hashtag.
The game for the champions. So I just wanted to leave it on that note, the power of social media and the power of hashtags.
Scott, but that's a great name, but it's not going to beat Joey Pancake. Remember last time we were on? Remember there was remember when we were on last time and Jason was talking about a player on their I think it was West Michigan. It was a AA or AAA team.
Yeah, it was Miners.
Yeah, it was mine. But he had a player named Joey Pancake, and he said they were making food hashtags all the time about him and naming meals like after him at like the ballpark stands. But it's unbelievable. Yeah, Growler Power or whatever you want to do with it. That name it's unbelievable. Like the things you could do with that. Like it's such a perfect name and it rhymes with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, no, and he was a fan favorite for the champions too. He was a power hitter, and he caught almost every single game that year, which I don't know how he did it, but he was fantastic. And
then we had Chris Winder on the team, and I remember, it's not a hashtag, but I remember like when he would come up bat, there was a bunch of guys at the games that would they would start singing the song like, to the Winder, to the wall. I always thought that was pretty clever as well. But yeah, no, the Ottawa champions, I mean, congrats on winning the title. That was fantastic. Must have been really cool to be a part of that as well. You can write a book about it, Nellis?
I almost did. Or at least a lengthy article on my blog, but that didn't end up happening.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on. And Kyle Liberto, was a pleasure to finally have you on the show. I mean, I'm hoping we could be in store for some more epic goal calls in the future.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, a show like this has a very special place in my heart because if it wasn't for digital media and all the coverage that I've gotten through the way of social media and television, I wouldn't be here talking, to you three fine-looking young men. So, it's a great thing you're doing, and thank you so much for the time.
My pleasure, and thank you for coming on. And Scott, gotta get the jacket, next time you come on, 3-timer. How was it being a 2-timer on Popternative?
It was a lot of fun, man. It was great, and I think you got something going here. So, and I like this new setup you've got.
Yeah, it took a while. Yeah, I mean, Blab going down really was a big hit because there was a lot of momentum going on with the show when it went down. And it just was tough to find a proper solution. I mean, these shows are not live anymore, so that is something different. Blab was a live platform for live broadcasts, but yeah, no, it's a lot. It's an easy setup. You just click it open, and boom, we're on the screen. So Scott, thank you so much for coming on the show. Mike, thank you so much, and Kyle, all the best, guys. You can catch previous episodes of Popternative on our YouTube page, and we are uploading them on our Facebook page as well, facebook.com/Popternative. You can follow us on Twitter, and you can follow all these great-looking gentlemen on Twitter as well, and their Twitter handles will be right below them, so make sure that you follow them. Thank you all for coming on, and have a great night.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.